Welcome to Happily Ever After is just the beginning. Keeping your relationship not just together, but happy, and we mean truly happy, is part art and part science. You've come to the right place. Here's your host, Leslie Dories.
In truth, the best gift that you can give your children is to protect the health of their parents' marriage, meaning yours. You are their first teachers about relationships. How you and your partner interact is laying the groundwork for their future relationships. And the health of their relationships will determine the quality of their lives, because that's true for all of us. Unfortunately, most of us never get any formalized instruction on relationships. What we know we have picked up, quote unquote, on the street, so to speak. Not the way we want our children to learn most things, and certainly not something so important as love. But today, I'm going to address that with my guest, speaker, author, and founder and director of Better Dad Ministries, Rick Johnson. So Rick, thanks for coming on the show and talking about what doesn't get talked about a lot.
Hi, Leslie. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You wrote a piece that appeared on the Good Men Project, 4 Things to Teach Your Children About Love. And I found it really fascinating because one of my Leslie-isms is that no one has to take a relationship 101 class and everybody should. So why do you think it is important to teach our kids about love? I mean, like I said, most of the time we just learn it on the streets. It's like, isn't this what love is?
Well, that's probably not the best way to learn things, but I think it's something, again, you're right, we don't talk about, and I think parents don't intentionally teach their kids. Now, their example obviously speaks louder than their words, but at the same time, as an example, I came from a very abusive alcoholic home, and when I got married, I had no clue what normal relationships look like. I thought the home I come from was normal because I had never seen anything different.
But for you, it was normal.
Right. And so, it took a lot of years of my wife saying, well, that's not normal, and telling me why. And it's like, oh, yeah, you're right. So, yeah, I think that's something we overlook a little bit, and probably doesn't take much. I've been talking to I got a 10-year-old granddaughter that we adopted, and I've been talking to her. She's going through puberty now, unbelievably. And so I've been talking a lot about men and relationships and how men are and what to look for, what not to look for, the whole situation. So hopefully it's entering into her, into her hormone-laden brain.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the thing, because people think relationships are natural, and up to a point they are. But just like you said, your experience becomes your normal. And this is what I tell people: anything that happened in the 4 walls of your home growing up is normal, and we don't know whether or not that's good, bad, or indifferent until we try to create it. And then and even if we promise that we are not going to repeat that pattern, if we don't know what else to do, that pattern's all we've got. Right.
And it leaves, if we don't do it, it leaves a void that we need to fill. And if we don't know what to fill it with, those, especially under stress, those old habits come back.
Right. Yeah, that's what I tell people.
With a vengeance.
Right. And even though, and I used to have, my supervisor used to ask me, he said, Leslie, have you ever known somebody to just stop doing something? And I said, not unless they have an alternative behavior to engage in. And I think that's where the problem comes in, is that, we end up doing these things on autopilot because, and if we don't know what else to do, but love is natural.
We follow in the footsteps. Yeah, we follow in the footsteps that we're, well, and it's interesting that we can actually change. My wife is a perfect example. She came from a very abusive home, left home at like 13. And I asked her when I said, how in the world did you turn out to be, a
normal human being,
and be a normal human being, right? And she said, you know, I just decided I did not want to live that kind of life or be that kind of person. And
Well,
thankfully, she did have some role models throughout the years of what a healthy marriage and relationship looked like. So I think even if we don't have a good, there are things we can do like educating ourselves, having mentors, role models,
right.
That we can change. That's what I did. It took a long time and a lot of hard work, but it's possible.
So I want to jump into these 4 things that you say are important to teach our kids. And the first thing you say is that love is forgiveness. So why do you equate those two, and how does forgiveness work in your mind?
Well, I don't remember who said it, but somebody said a great quote about the fact that if you want to have a good marriage, you have to wake up and forgive your spouse every day.
Right. Or several times during the day, I think, is part of the quote.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty true. And I think forgiveness plays a big part. You know, when you're with somebody 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you know, little things can build up. And I think they don't really matter that much in a relationship, but they get blown out of proportion. And so the ability to forgive allows us to be able to love, and the ability to not be able to forgive, I think, causes us to hate as opposed to loving each other. And so if we can teach our kids to forgive, they got a big step up in life, I think, of leading a happy life.
So what does forgiveness look like? Because I talk about forgiveness a lot. And a lot of times people, in their minds, they equate, if I forgive, it means what the person did was okay. I'm going, no, that's not what it means. So what does it mean for you?
Well, and I think you have to talk about that kind of stuff. You know, you can't just let things go that are a problem. But after you've talked about it, I just had a talk the other day, and it was like, wow, I didn't know that's how you interpreted what I said or what I did. I had no idea. And same with me. It was like she had no idea. And so, you know, I think under those circumstances to forgive, and I think we both did at that point. We're like, wow, I really apologize for what I did. I didn't mean to hurt you, and you know, I forgive you for that. And so it's very powerful because you kind of wipe the slate clean, so to speak, and you can step forward now and have a healthy relationship.
And I love the fact that that it's talked about, because you said something that is so important, is that what I meant isn't necessarily how it landed.
Right.
And you know, I mean, I talk about with working with my clients, it's like, can you give your partner the benefit of the doubt? Can you look at your partner with goodwill and generosity that they don't know that what they just did or said didn't sit well with me? I mean, and a lot of people will sit and just stew on it. And it's like, they should have known. I'm like going, oh my gosh, the mind reading school of relationships.
You probably will get a lot of blowback on this, but I think women are really bad at allowing stuff to stew and fester, and pretty soon it's blown way out of proportion, and I don't even know what I did. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, that's part of it. I mean, and it is one of those things where, you know, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there was a YouTube video. It's probably still there. It's probably been 15 years since it came out, about Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage. And it's the idea that women remember things differently, and I don't necessarily want to say better, but, you know, because it's like, I remember having conversations with either my son or my husband or something, and I'll say, I remember having a conversation with my son, and he says, you never told me that. I said, yes, you were coming down the stairs. I was coming up the stairs. Halfway through that, we had this conversation, and he went, oh, yeah, you're right. And it wasn't that, you know, but again, the other thing that people have to understand is I'm going to pay more attention to the things that are important to me, so I'm going to remember that differently than you do. I mean, I remember my oldest sister, 1 year old, she wanted for Christmas was a baseball glove. And my mother has no recollection of that. And because it wasn't important to my mother, but it was very important to my sister. And so these are the kinds of things that are really important. And so that forgiveness is is really critical.
Well, and you brought up a really good point about giving your spouse the benefit of the doubt. I mean, we tend to give compassion and forgiveness easier to strangers or people at work than we do our spouse, and that's the person that loves us more than anybody in the world. We should be giving them way more grace than we do other people.
Right, and and so a lot of times people go, well, but they did it on purpose. I said, why do you want to believe they did it on purpose? Now, I mean, now there are some things that it's like, okay, but to jump off the bat to say to somebody, well, you did this purposely to hurt me, it's like,
right.
Why do you want to believe that about your partner?
Exactly. Why would I do that?
I mean, and a lot of times people will say, well, because I've told them 20 times, and you talk to the other person, and they go, I don't know what you're talking about, because it wasn't clear. It wasn't.
Right.
That hurts me. Don't do that again.
Right.
So the second thing, and this is a really important one, the second lesson that you identify that you say we should teach our kids is that love is not about sex. So how is it that you think these two get conflated, and what role does sex play in a loving relationship?
Well, I think it gets conflated by Hollywood, and every movie and television show that's ever been made talks about, people fall into bed right away and then somehow they're in this huge loving relationship. And sometimes that happens, but my experience has been that, love and sex are not necessarily intertwined. Especially men. I think men can have sex with somebody and not have feelings towards them. I'm not sure women are as easily to do that, but and how they get mixed, I think that's just what our culture teaches us, and we need to tell our kids that that's not necessarily true. You just don't go out and have sex with somebody and expect them to fall in love. And if you expect a guy that you're dating to love you because you have sex with him, you're going to be in for a rude awakening, because that's probably just not going to happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think this is part of the myth of falling in love, because of the falling in love hormones and all of that,
right.
And the wanting to rip each other's clothes off and all, which there's a place for that, and I call it, falling in love, those 18 months. It's the time we meet, mate, and procreate.
Right.
But without that commitment, and and I do think it is very, very difficult, and I think even for men, I think they still want to connect. It's not that they're not going to enjoy the physical aspect of it,
right.
But I think that when it's not just about sex, when there is some level of a deeper connection, it becomes more meaningful. It is not just this physical act that any two people can do. But I think
it was very
hard
interesting.
For today's teens. Yeah.
Oh, there's no question. Porn is rampant. They can look at it anytime they want for free and blah blah blah. But I came to the realization at some point in my life, I don't remember when, that I was equating sex to love. Mm-hmm. So I figured if I had sex with somebody, it automatically meant that they loved me, which is, I guess, what I was desperately searching for. And it's not. It's not. It's almost a completely different thing. Now, sex does play a huge role in our relationships once we have a relationship developed. Mm-hmm. For instance, when we're married, there's no question that sex creates intimacy and and is necessary. There's there's no way we can have a healthy relationship and not enjoy physical pleasure with our spouse. So
but yeah, I mean,
and that's something that you need to work on after 20, 30 years. There's no hormones left, so you got to really work on that. So, and I think most people just give up at a certain point, Mm-hmm. And it makes it tough to have a good marriage after so many years.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I would argue there's a lot of things that people can do to keep that connection that they don't, but that's a topic for another day. So This is Happily Ever After is Just the Beginning on webtalkradio.net. I'm Leslie Dories, and I'm talking with speaker and author Rick Johnson about the lessons children need to learn about love. He is the founder and director of Better Dad Ministries. So you learned about love from your parents, and they learned about it from theirs, and so on and so on. And you're passing that knowledge to your children. And if the lessons haven't been good ones, the pattern of suffering will continue. But you have the power to change what's being learned. And good relationship skills can be taught if you're willing to acquire them. And if you are, I can help. You can reach me by phone at area code 919-924-0463. Again, that's 919-924-0463. Or you can send me an email at Leslie, Lesli, at foundationscoachingnc.com. That's FOUNDATIONS, coaching, N as in Nancy, C as in Charlie.com. And you can go to either place and reach out to me, and we can get you scheduled for your 5-star relationship strategy session. Because, you know, knowing about love and knowing what works can make all the difference. So I want to get back to my conversation with Rick Johnson about what we should be teaching our kids, or what we should actually be learning ourselves. So Rick, you said that the third lesson is love is action, not emotion. So could you expand on that?
Sure. Well, you know, probably early on in the relationship, emotions play a huge role. But after you're in an established relationship, I think love is a verb. I think it's an action word. I think that what we do speaks louder than what we say, and so we need to show that our spouse that we love them, that by doing things that, you know, maybe you don't want to do but makes them happy. And it's very interesting. I was talking to a woman once, and she was very upset that she didn't feel that her husband did his share of the chores around the house.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she said, you know, I was really upset about that. And one day I was sitting looking out the window, and it was pouring down rain. And she said, my husband was out there on a ladder cleaning the gutters out. She said, and I didn't even know the gutters need to be cleaned out. And she said, so I really had to stop and think that he was doing chores. He just wasn't doing the ones that I thought he should do. And so, you know, again, we need to look at things as actions and not necessarily emotions. And I think if we can do that and be a little bit more logical and rational about it, we'll see that our spouses aren't quite as bad as we think they are.
Well, and, you know, and I love this concept that love is action, because it really is, and this is where the love languages can come in very helpful, because you know, I'm using my own definition of how do I feel loved, and if I'm not using my partner's, then there's going to be this disconnect. And
exactly.
You know, and
we tend to do with our partner what we want, right?
Absolutely.
And that might not be what they want, what they need, one of their love languages, you know.
Right, and we have to be willing to talk about it and willing to negotiate. What does that look like? And it's so funny, because the other day, you know, my husband happens to be sick right now, and the other day we have this rule that whoever cooks, the other one cleans up. It's just the thing that we've had our whole marriage. And he was cleaning up the kitchen, and I said, "You're not feeling well. What are you doing?" And he goes, "Well, it's your love language, because acts of service are one of my love languages." And it's like, honey, I appreciate it. Go lie down. I'm going to finish this. But I mean, even sick, he was trying to show me that he loved me.
Right. Exactly.
And, you know, and so, and this idea that it is an action and I don't feel like it. Well, you know, sometimes feelings follow actions, and sometimes actions follow feelings. And so sometimes it's like, you know, why wouldn't I want to show my partner by actions? And sometimes, and if your love language happens to be words of affirmation, then the language is actually being told that your partner loves you, those actual words. And it's funny, because my husband, when we first met, said, "Don't expect to hear the words 'I love you.'" And he pretty
I already told you once.
Right.
If it changes, I'll let you know.
Right, but he pretty much tells me every day. I mean, literally in words. Now he always shows me, but frequently in words. But and it can be these.
Well, I think women need to hear that. They need to hear you're beautiful. I love you. Well, I'll stay with you forever.
I mean, and again, I think it is one of those things where I actually think everybody needs to hear that. I think men need to hear that they're loved and that they're found attractive and, that
and respected, appreciated.
Right. And how we do this. And sometimes, and this is really important, and I have to say this, sometimes the greatest act of love is kindness, is being nice to that person. Right? It's like sometimes I'm just appalled at what I hear people say to each other, and I'm like going,
"Oh, I know, it's amazing, isn't it?"
Yeah, it's like, where is that coming from? I mean,
exactly.
So I do want to.
And here's the thing: is emotions are all over the place. I mean, they can change on the drop of a dime. Action is pretty steady, and so I think men particularly, they want to make their wives happy, because if their wives are happy, they feel good. Their world's all, the way it's supposed to be. But they don't know a lot of times.
Right.
They don't know what to say, what to do. So I think it's really important for women to explain to them what their love languages are, what their expectations are, because otherwise, most of the time, we don't have a clue. So.
Well, and I think that is so important that, and I agree with you. In my experience, at least the men that I have worked with are good guys who love their wives, love their families, want to do a good job. For them, it's part of that providing, protecting. That, if my wife or my child is unhappy, somehow I have failed.
Right.
That's not a true statement, but that's actually how it gets implemented. And the other thing, and you said this, and I think it's really important, is that men would rather do nothing than fail. So if they don't know what they're going to do is going to work, they're just going to go, okay. And this is where they can get caught in this, damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing.
Right. Well, and Valentine's Day comes to mind for me.
Yeah, one of my least favorite holidays, because quite frankly,
and here's the problem.
I think every day we should be telling the people that we care about.
That's
that we
true.
love them.
Well, here's the other thing. I think a lot of women that are unhappy don't know what they want.
Exactly.
They just know that they're not happy, and if they don't know, they can't explain it to their man, and he's never going to know, and he's just going to continue to make her unhappy. So. Well.
And I'm going to say she's choosing to be unhappy, but that's my opinion. So I want to get to the last lesson before we run out of time. And the last lesson, and this one is, when I read this, I went, I love it, but, and the last lesson is that love stays. So, I mean, and I know that in terms of loving our children, they can get that message, although when we're not showing that message to the other parent, the message that kids get is that love doesn't stay. That, I mean, the conversation that a couple that's splitting will have is like, mommy and daddy love you, they just don't love each other anymore. So that belies the love stays, because if mommy can stop loving daddy or daddy can stop loving mommy, doesn't that mean they can stop loving me? So is this what you're talking about when you talk about that love stays?
Well, I don't remember what I wrote in the article. Probably something smarter than I'm going to come up with now. But no, I think it's important that I'm not talking about if you're having huge problems, you know what I'm saying, and been through counseling and everything. I'm just saying I think a lot of people quit when things get difficult. And my observation after 41 years of marriage is that there's going to be seasons. There's going to be bad times. There's going to be good times. And if you weather through the bad times, those good times are so much better together. And if you don't do it with the same person, you got to go do it with somebody. So you're going to have to go through the same thing anyway.
Right.
And so I think part of it is when things are tough or somebody's sick or whatever, that you stay speaks that you love them. If you didn't love them, it would be easy to just say, yep, sorry.
Well, and this kind of goes back to the love is an action, because if we stop acting loving towards each other, then I would think that would sow the ground for not staying. I mean, and there are a few of my mentors that, kind of have, took a stand. I'm a marriage and family therapist by training, and one of my mentors said, marriage is in our title. But there are a lot of marriage and family therapists that won't promote marriage. And I don't mean, and I don't think everybody should be married, nor do I think that every marriage can or should be saved. But so many more could if people understood that there are going to be times when I don't like my spouse. But the truth of the matter is there were times I didn't like my kids either. So
exactly.
Or they didn't like me, or my husband doesn't like me, or whatever.
Right.
But if you have that grounding of love, and that if I, because sometimes if I act in a loving fashion, I start to feel love for my partner or the kid who has just driven crazy. Right. And and so how can people? I mean, what have you seen? What do you recommend for people who? I mean, they really are struggling because. Yeah. Kind of like the woman you were talking about. Well, he's not doing, he's either not doing the things that I want him to do or think he should be doing, but there he is doing this other thing that I didn't even know needed to be done. And it's kind of like, because you guys aren't talking to each other. So what do you tell people about love staying?
Well, we talked online or offline about the statistics of kids from broken homes, or however you want to describe it. Divorce or whatever, and statistically it's off the chart that kids do better from a stable two-parent home than they do from a single parent or any other type of living situation as far as that goes. And so, there's that for one thing. And I think we tend to, and you mentioned it, sometimes you didn't like your kids. But we don't think about divorcing our kids, right? We figure out a way to make it better, and because we're always going to take care of our kids, right? So why don't we do that with our spouse? Why don't we do the same, pay the same? And that's a big thorn in my side, is that I'm not picking on women, but I'm going to say I think they're probably more apt to do this. They spend all their time when the kids are growing up focused on the kids and not on building their marriage. And then when the kid's gone, there's nothing left between them. And why should we stay together? We don't even like each other. I don't even know you anymore,
Right. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one for me. And I mean, I raised two children to adulthood. But my husband and I still stayed connected. In fact, I remember, my husband and I were going out on a date one night, and my son goes, "What restaurant are you going to?" And I told him, and it was his favorite restaurant. And I looked at him and I said, "We're going to Bistro 604, and you're not coming." He was so mad at me, because it's like, no, this is our time. And, and it's very difficult. One of the things that drives me crazy.
And that's a good lesson for them to learn, that they're not the center of the universe. And that mom and dad's relationship is most important.
Well, and it goes to my opening statement that truly the best gift you can give your kids is to protect their marriage, because that's the foundation for them. And but we have but the child-centric society, it's all about the kids. It's like, love you guys, but at some point in time, the ideal is you're going to be off on your own, and Dad and I are going to still be here. So what do we do then?
Well, and I remember, like, when the kids were little, you know, we would hug or kiss in front of them, and they would, you know, pretend like they were disgusted. But they're in there, them and the dog are trying to get in between us, right, because of that love that's emanating, and they want to be a part of that. So it gives kids a very secure feeling when their parents love each other.
Yes, it does. So, Rick, where can people learn more about Better Dad Ministries, about you, what you do? Because, I mean, what you're doing is really important. So please let them know.
Yeah, betterdads.net is our website, and you can learn probably more than you ever wanted to know about what we do and who I am on there. Yeah, all my books are on Amazon as well, and I can sell them off the website if you want them signed or anything. But yeah, we do a lot of work, a lot of programs with families, single parents, kids, mentoring programs, you know, different stuff like that, camps. And so yeah, it's been doing it for a lot of years, and it never gets boring. Right?
No, I never get bored by relationships. So if you are a regular listener, you know that I never use miserable and marriage in the same sentence. And the answer isn't necessarily to end a marriage. If you have children, it's important to see if you can make it better, because they are watching and learning. And they're a great reason to get some help, but they cannot keep you together. So if you would truly do anything for your kids, as many parents say, are you willing to address the issues in your marriage? And one of the things that I hope you do to learn more about relationships and marriage is to keep listening to this show. And until next week, stay loving.